Hey everyone, as you probably know, this is the AEF Spark Up webinar, and there's actually a series of quite a few episodes. So this is the first one, and what are we talking about today?
Pitches, online pitches.
Online pitching tips, that's right. Now, before we start, that's a test question. Now, should we maybe, I don't know, introduce ourselves?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay, well, hi, my name is MC Melody. If you've been active in the startup scene or if you are part of the AEF community, you've probably seen me hosting some of their events one way or another. And what about, let's see, what else do I do? Actually, oh yeah, so I teach everyone about online and offline public speaking skills.
Very important.
Very important. Like you need that.
Yeah.
But another thing is I actually make an online course that teaches people how to do professional video conferences. Also very important,
yes,
hopefully.
Yes.
And
in times of COVID, everyone needs to know.
Everyone?
Everyone.
Everyone. And how about you? I know this guy's face is quite familiar.
No, I don't do anything.
All right. So
really.
why are you here?
No. Okay, so like this is MC Melody. I will be VC Chibo for today. And so I have been investing in early stage tech startups for over 10 years. It's a long time. And yeah, I mean, I'm here to talk about what we look for as venture capitalists from these entrepreneurs when they're pitching us. Right. And you know, in these times, everyone's doing it online. We're doing Zoom calls. Yeah, let's see what's different about it.
I know. Well, is a start. Everything's online. This segment is no exception. So we have two iPads in front of us. Are we supposed to do something with this?
Mine says compelling.
Mine says 5-minute pitch. Okay, I'll start first.
Okay. What are you going to do with that?
Because mine looks more self-explanatory. So,
I don't know.
Well, I think this question is for you. So if you only give a 5-minute pitch time for a founder, that's usually the typical time, plus or minus. What is it that you want to hear about? And what are you really looking for in a pitch? What's a hidden agenda that you got?
No, there's really no hidden agenda, you know, like we are very open, you know, and open-minded and looking for great people and great ideas. You know, like when you come in and you meet a venture capitalist, you should definitely, you know, like feel confident, right? You should definitely be able to present yourself and what your company is doing in the best possible light. Make sure that you talk about how it's different from what else is in the market, right? You need to also talk about the market, right? You need to catch the attention of the VC, right? Because usually, you know, like we invest in companies that really need to hit it big, right? We're looking for the next unicorn.
Right.
And so if an entrepreneur comes in and, you know, they talk about something that is, you know, maybe like a smaller market, a little bit niche, you know, this is something, and we're just like creating a new product, but it's, you know, it's tough to grow into like a whole business or like a company, then, you know, that's less interesting, right? So you need to like be able to wow the VC by saying, okay, well, look, this is like this huge opportunity. There's this like, you know, compelling problem that, you know, we need to solve, right? And, you know, we're the right people to do it, right? And so that's the last part. There's market, there's business model, and there's people, right? And so like, you know, then you talk about your people. And that's actually the most important part. Through the whole conversation and the whole pitch, we're actually looking at you and seeing like, okay, well, is this someone that I could get behind? Right? Is this someone who I feel like could make an impact in the world? And, you know, I think that those are really things that you need to think about.
And they need to do this in 5 minutes.
You know, sometimes it doesn't even take 5 minutes, right? I mean, I've seen people who are so impressive. They walk in the room, they're like, look, this is me, this is what I'm doing. 30 seconds in, I'm like, damn.
Wow.
I want to back this guy.
That is really condensed, but that is true. I guess with that aura, sometimes, especially with the confidence in that kind of that energy, you can feel it in the first like 10 seconds.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of it is aura. How do you how do you think
I'm trying to
about
say.
Aura?
I want to say. I want to say
Okay,
what's
I
on your
can't-
iPad.
My iPad is locked. But I think I remember it was saying compelling.
Do we need that on screen? Yeah.
Okay, so I guess, we talked about Aura. And, when you think about online pitches or online presentations, what makes those more compelling?
Ooh, wow, that's $1 million question. It's like you gotta bribe me under a table for me to speak. No, just kidding. You don't have to bribe me.
Let me see what I have.
You just have to motivate me. Okay, well, for me, because I think I don't see the startups nearly as often as you, but I always see it when they're on stage. You probably see them before they're on stage as well. But there's some things I actually see. Like I think for you, if it's the first 10 seconds, you can feel it.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I'm kind of making side bets with myself, and I was like, no, that guy's not gonna
Prove
make
me wrong.
it.
Prove me wrong.
Exactly. So there's a few things. I think just like with any videos, especially how we're doing video presentations now, I think having that hook is important, because otherwise, how can you get someone's attention in 10 seconds?
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, people just aren't going to listen, especially with the attention span that we have for the online events. It's just not going to fly. Another thing is their product clear? Because I'm sure you can relate to this. There's some pitches where by the time they finish, I'm like, what's this guy selling? Yeah, so I think that
they drone on.
Yeah.
And on.
Like it seems like an obvious thing to say, but then a lot of people actually miss it. And also maybe to actually put it into a story that people can relate to. Because when these VCs come in, they're not exactly like your fans. You're not talking to your fans. It would be a different story if they are, but these people, you're trying to elicit their interest. So you're trying to think, what is in it for them, right? And what is it that they can relate to? So sometimes I think being too immersive into me, it kind of distances and people just don't want to listen.
Sure.
And another thing is, especially with the talking head videos that you see on Zoom meetings when we do video, is that I try to stay away from 100% talking head. Maybe have a picture-in-picture with your deck, or maybe try to interact with some props or whatever, because that attention span is just way too short. From my experience, anything more than 2 minutes with a talking head, people just phase out. It's just the way that our brains work. Now, another thing is with the normal, the physical pitches, it's easier to get your attention because you're sitting right in front of them and you see more of them. Whereas for the video part, you only see this much if you're lucky. And I think even just in the previous pitches in the finale, we've actually seen technical glitches where people's internet are kind of having these ups and downs, and there's parts where you can't really hear them.
Yeah. You cut out.
But the thing is, as the presenter, I think we have to do our due diligence and make sure that people actually receive our messages. Because if there's...
You know what I found is helpful, actually? I've actually found that, in the middle of your pitch, actually you cut into a video part.
Yeah.
Right? You have different segments of your presentation. You cut into a video that describes your product, that shows your business in action, or you talking to different people, right? Like a corporate video.
Right.
I know that sounds cheesy, and normally in offline pitches, you don't really need that because it's so interactive already.
Right.
But I found that in virtual pitches, it's been helpful.
Aha! So this is speaking from the VC. Woohoo! And also, I think is that flow, especially on video, when people need this, when people will actually watch the delay live as well, right? So when people are watching back, it's what's this guy trying to do? Because it's disconnected pieces of information.
Right.
So that flow is very important. And last but not least, as I just mentioned before, is think in the audience perspective, which is in your perspective. Because these people are not here to just listen to your dream of just the dream itself. They need to see how doable is it, what's the market, what kind of homework you've done. So think in their perspective, do homework, find out who these guys are. That's my word of advice.
I feel like it's important to be able to paint the problem and paint the vision of what you want to do. But at the same time, you also need to bring that down into something more fundamental and something that you can actually implement. Right? What are the actual steps that you guys have been taking to follow that up? For us, we're institutional investors. We like to see traction. right? And so we like to see, okay, well, this is great. This is, it seems like there's real opportunity in the market, but how are you guys addressing this and what have you done to date?
Exactly.
I mean, I think that those are very important to include.
Right. So that's how to make your presentation a bit more compelling, just to get these guys' interest. Now, maybe I should ask you another question, because I know there's another one in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Nope, don't shake it. Why am I shaking my iPad? Okay, there we go. Top 5. Okay, so this actually means what are the essential components of an effective pitch. Now, the reason why it says top 5 is because we can say a gazillion things. So I know, in your perspective, what's the top 5 in no particular order?
Right. I'm trying to think of 5 right now.
What? Give me one. Give me one.
Okay. Essential components of an effective pitch.
In your eyes.
Needs to be real, right? It needs to be real. You need to be genuine. You need to, have like a real element in it, right? Whether that's in the storytelling part of it when you're discussing the problem, whether that's talking about the business model and how you've really gone about implementing it. Whether that's about, like how you want to relate to investors, right? Like I feel like being genuine is super important, because it's really about the connection between you and the investor, right?
Right.
And on Zoom or online, that connection is even harder to build, right? Because, when you're face to face, there is a rapport there, right? You get more trust, I feel. But when it's online, I mean, it's so easy to zone out. It's so easy to just like not be able to see like what a person is really like. So especially online, you really need to find some way to relate in a more real way with the person that you're trying to talk to.
Do you think one immediate thing that actually came to the top of my head, do you think eye contact lacks more so in a video call than it is in real person?
Because, oh yeah, for sure. Because for me, like when I'm on these webinars or like when I'm on Zoom, like I don't know where the camera is, right? Like I'm looking at the screen because I'm looking at like the screen share,
right.
Or I'm looking at the talking head over here, and then like obviously that's not where the camera is.
Ooh.
And so I'm always looking like in different places. I'm sure like in this webinar you guys will see as well. Like I'm not looking at you guys most of the time.
So don't be like him if you're trying to pitch. Make sure you're talking. Yeah, because it makes a huge difference. That probably actually relates to what you're saying. When people are trying to connect to that person through the camera,
right.
First you have to look into the camera. But a lot of times we're actually looking at the screen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think that reminds me of one other thing. So I will gradually add on to my list of 5. So maybe eventually we'll get there. But right now I'm at 2.
You're working towards that, yeah.
Right. So I think it's also important to not get into your own kind of groove, so to speak, and just like in your own track and like not allow for interaction, right? Like I feel like especially in these virtual talks, like founders often will just keep talking, right? Because they want to avoid that awkward silence,
yes.
Which comes in the middle of, you don't know if the other guy's paying attention or doing something else, or whether he's just like pondering your last point. And then like entrepreneurs will be like, try to fill up that silence by like just very quickly adding something in or like just like some filler. And I would just encourage them, just allow for pauses, right? Momentary pauses where where the investor can jump in, ask a question, like, digest a little bit of what you've said. Because if you don't allow for that pause, then investors may quickly lose track of what you're trying to say, right? Because you just keep piling things in, and they haven't been able to digest yet.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like real face-to-face interactions are so much more interactive and dynamic because there are like opportunities for investors to jump in, right? And it becomes more of a discussion. You always want like a pitch to be more of a discussion, more engaged than just like one-on-one, right?
That's right. Actually, I've seen a few of those moments that you just mentioned, and it's actually really hard when you do it online, not just a dead air thing, because it's really work.
You must have seen that so much as an MC.
And plus, of course, the technical glitches when you have like an internet delay sometimes because you can't control the other party's internet speed. And I'm sure you guys will actually face that at one point or another, is when with that delay, and then the people are thinking and you're thinking, and then and all these like 2 seconds pile up, you probably have like 8 seconds of nothing. So for me as a moderator, of course, I have to take that into account
I would
and
hate
just
to
make.
be in your shoes.
No.
Sometimes.
Did you want to, we should swap. Actually, we should swap our
Maybe I'll be
positions
MC Chibo.
Exactly, and I'll be VC Melody. That's actually pretty cool. But yes, but you have to overcome that awkward silence because we do need to take that technology and all that processing time into account. Okay, so we're at 2 now. So do you have anything to pile onto your essential components?
Really? I was just about to go back to my iPad. I've been talking
What? Okay, so I think that actually included a lot of things. Should we leave it at that?
Let's do that.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. All right. So next.
So I actually, I'm laughing because on my iPad, I have a top 5 as well.
What?
And
what's
so
a
I
top
think
5?
my top 5 for you would be, what are your top 5 tips for giving a great online presentation?
Well, we do actually, because as we said, because of the COVID, everyone's doing everything online. Now, 5 tips, these are not in any particular order, so it's not, the first one's is no less or more important than the 5th one. So I'll just kind of do it in the sequence, I guess, or non-sequence. First is the gesture and your voice. Now, people are like, they know how to dress up and everything to some extent, but a lot of times we don't pay attention to our gesture because you're so limited to almost like a news anchor kind of frame.
Right.
So everything below your feet, it's almost like you're hiding behind a podium now.
Oh, that reminds me of my next tip.
What?
Let me get back to that.
All right, so it's almost like hiding behind a podium. So for public speaking, I always tell my students, don't hide behind a podium unless you have to, because you might feel a bit more secure, but we see that much less of you. So when you're trying to express yourself, you have a lot more constraints. And second of all, in terms of your voice, amp it up a little bit. I know when you hear, like when we watch a playback, we actually sound pretty normal here. But if we actually look at like the real setting here, me and him, first of all, we're talking a little bit louder than normal.
I talk like this normally. I mean, I'm a pretty loud guy sometimes.
Yeah. You know what they did to the microphone, right? So, okay, so another thing is when we act normal, I'm not telling you to be fake about it. Okay, so that's the disclaimer. You don't have to pretend to be something that you're not. You don't have to be fake. You don't have to put on an act. But makeup, gestures, and voice, when it's normal in front of the camera, it looks bleh. That when I say that to girls, they're like, "Yeah, because camera makeup."
It's the same thing as like stage makeup, right? It's so like over the top when you see them in person.
Exactly, but it's normal on camera. So it's the same thing when you're actually speaking into a camera. Just amp it up a little bit more because otherwise it'll just sound like we're not happy. And another thing is appearance and your visuals. As I said, a lot of people pay attention to what we wear, the waist up, because that's all you see. Yes and no, because you never, for me, I always kind of just go one step more because I never know when the camera guys are actually going to pan down. Like maybe you brought something and they're, okay, let's take a look at it. And then suddenly you saw my pajamas.
What camera guys are these?
They do it because when you're sitting on a couch, when someone brings a prop, they'll be like, okay, let's take a look. It's like, no. And with the deck, I think less is more. I don't know if you would agree, but there's a lot of people who go to the other end of the spectrum where they put everything. Yeah, so keep it simple. And I think for me, I think maybe don't put everything on there so that so it forces people to listen to you. Would you agree?
Yeah. No, I mean, well, there's always like that spectrum, right? You never want to be on either end of those.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, you have to find the right balance.
And
as with all things in life.
She was going to share with us where exactly that is. And storytelling, yes, we say that over and over again. People like to hear stories. But dialogue is just as important, especially for the online sessions, because as we mentioned, sometimes you don't even know if the other person heard your whole entire thing. Like in terms of, delays, lags, and audio stuff. Like, can we actually have a dialogue? Because sometimes we need to pause and just make sure people can process and people can acknowledge that, you heard me. So like that. And another thing is, I don't know if you would actually think the same, but from my experience, sometimes people walk in with a great story, but then it's almost like they forgot why they're here. Like there's no call to action. It's not clear in terms of what they're asking for.
Right.
They're just telling you their story,
Right.
but they don't know what to do with it, or it's not conveyed to you.
Yeah, no, sometimes we see that too, right? Even in like pitch competitions, like there'll be startups on stage, they'll be like talking about what they do, and then at the end they're like, actually, we're not fundraising.
Yes. Oh,
And we're all just like, oh, hey, well, that's great. Good for you.
Oh, actually, I remember that. I actually saw a few that was
Right,
like that.
yeah, no, I remember that.
Yeah, or the first, that's the first thing that they say, and I'm like, what? And last, I think we have to think, again, in your perspective, in our audience perspective, is what are they here for? And have we satisfied their need? What is it in for them? And are we providing some sort of edutainment? So for you, maybe we're not here to educate you guys, but we're here to give you what you want, to give you the value. But at the same time, are you kind of entertained? Because this stuff can be quite dry, frankly. Some of this technology, as great as it is for you guys, and I'm sure it's fabulous. It might be world changing, but we might want to jazz it up a little bit so that we can absorb the information.
Right.
So I always say edutainment. Just make sure people are a little bit entertained, because with the thing of internet right now, everyone, I think the bar has actually gone up. We have
I would appreciate some entertainment. I mean, I go through dry pitches all the time.
All right. So there we go. So this guy right here can use them spicing up.
Okay, no. So before we move on, like I needed to jump in because I totally had like a corollary from one of your like second or third tips, I think it was. You also mentioned the thing about mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when you're like, not talking, make sure you mute. Because, even if you're just eating or drinking, I mean, no one else wants to hear that.
Nobody.
Right? Like, it's just the etiquette of this. Oh, we have a question on that, right?
Yeah, actually, we'll save that for later.
Can I just jump that? Because that's my next slide.
Okay, well, yeah, sure. Okay, go, do it.
Video etiquette.
Video etiquette.
What are your tips around video etiquette?
Okay, so video etiquette, that's a very good question, because there's some very obvious ones. I guess still not so obvious, because this online conference thing is quite new to some people, so maybe it'll benefit somebody else. Some of them are quite unspoken because people are embarrassed to tell you, or there's nothing in it for them to tell you. It might destroy some relationship and makes it embarrassing, so they don't tell you. So I'll do some obvious and not so obvious ones. Don't ghost the people. So meaning, do show video, do show your audio.
I think there's a problem in Asia.
Why?
Like people are just not as, accustomed to showing video, I feel like.
I force people to. I don't talk to them if they don't show. So it pushes them out of their comfort zone. It's one of the house rules. Show your video, show your audio, unless you're taking a sip of whatever, then mute it. And also another problem, another thing that I keep saying, maybe you've have experience in it too, is you don't know when they're actually finished. And you want to jump in, but then they start to pick up. It's like, what? Or you don't know when.
Especially for people who like to talk a lot, and they just keep rolling.
Exactly. Or sometimes when you have the Zoom with many people, you don't know who's the next guy to talk. Yeah. So I guess a moderator would help, but even when you don't have one, sometimes we just have to make it that obvious. It's like, oh, thanks so much for that. Now let's move on to who.
Good point.
Yeah, and just make it really obvious who's talking next. Next one,
So I don't cut in like I do all the time on this webinar.
VC Chibo can do it. But with energy level, make sure you keep it up. Think about happy things. You should be happy because you're seeing people that you want to see. You're talking about things. But you should be happy though, because for people who's happy to see you, because he's a money guy. and we're very passionate about our topics. So I don't see any reason not to be not to be energetic, but do bring that on the camera. So do think about happy thoughts, because as I said, being normal on camera.
Yeah, no, there
really
was
sucks.
this one pitch recently where just like the founder was just so low key and just so monotone. Oh, no. I was really like, oh my gosh, is your startup okay? I mean, you must be going through some difficult times, right? I mean, when you're pitching to an investor and you're just like flatlining there, it's just, it just doesn't make me feel very confident about how you guys are doing.
That energy, it's contagious, isn't it? And also virtual backgrounds. I know with technology now, you can do very nice virtual background with the Golden Gate Bridge, or sometimes I've seen Teletubbies.
What type of virtual background do you prefer?
I don't use virtual backgrounds.
Oh, you don't?
Because they're not that promising. Because sometimes I can actually lean forward and back, or part of the green green screen picks up on me
Right,
and I
right.
look like I'm fading.
Right.
And
And that's okay, right? I mean, it's like the limitations of technology right now.
yeah, but
People
because they're
understand.
pre-recorded, and yeah, I don't want that. And also sometimes when you pick the really fun ones, it's only fun for the first few seconds
Right.
until it gets really distracting.
Yeah,
Like Teletubbies, no.
true.
Food and drinks.
Right.
Is that one kind of obvious when people are eating and
Oh
drinking
yeah,
on
that
camera?
one's yeah. I haven't seen that thankfully.
Are you serious now?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I've been like for pitches. I guess people are more mindful.
Okay, good. Because for online presentations, I've seen a lot of people. It's like, just hold on, and not cool. Another thing is focus. It sounds really obvious. This one is kind of like obvious and not so obvious. How do you show you're focused in an online session?
I don't know. How do you?
Exactly. That's $1 million question. Is look into the only place where you should look at.
The
Like
camera.
right there. Like you don't have to like look at it that you weird everyone out, but do
keep
have
looking
that
at it.
eye contact. Because as much as
Don't
much
blink.
more. No, that's just weird. That's just weird. Do blink, but you can look away. But don't forget the camera.
Right.
Yeah, and the guy that's next to
Right,
you,
right.
if there's one. And last, don't forget to introduce and say goodbye, because people are so relaxed when they're at home. They sometimes forget the etiquette of any meeting. Introduce the people. Who are they? Why are they here? And when you leave, come on, say goodbye. Don't just boom. Yeah.
That's a good choice.
That's actually
That's a
not
good
cool. Okay, and for this next one, because they look kind of similar, maybe I'll just kind of merge them into one. Now, first of all is, how do we get your attention? And second of all, what is it that turns you off from like at an online pitch?
In an online pitch.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, I mean, I think the good news is that when I'm signing on to a webinar or like when I'm signing on to a Zoom call or a pitch, you already have my attention, right?
Oh yeah.
So the key here is how not to lose my attention,
That is true.
right? I mean, whether it's like a 30-minute call or an hour-long call, I mean, how do you keep my attention through all of that, right? And I think, look, I mean, it's a lot of what we talked about before, right? I mean, it's just like, don't drone, leave room for kind of discussion and dialogue, make sure you hit like the important points, like, because I hear people just like adding in fluff, and I know that it's fluff because I've just heard so much fluff before, right? So just make sure you're concise. You make sure you hit the key points, what I want to hear in terms of like the problems, the solutions, where you guys are at, what you guys are looking for. I mean, and it's like, and it's easy, 30 minutes goes by really quick.
Okay, so but if there's one thing I can ask that really turns you off, is that one thing you're like, okay, I'm done? Is there that one thing?
Maybe like, and I said this before, I mean, maybe it's like just the overuse of buzzwords. It's just like some entrepreneurs will just like to throw like everything that's hot and like trending right now in like the startup space into their pitch, and it's just like, okay, well, why don't you just pick one and talk about it and how you guys are making an impact there? Because I just like, as an early stage company, like I just can't believe, or I can't see you being like an expert in like 5 different like world-changing technologies.
Yeah, and that
Right.
goes back to being genuine, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't oversell,
Exactly,
be yourself.
exactly.
And these guys
Yeah.
have heard everything, so
We
there's
really
no
have,
need to
yeah.
fluff it up. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one.
On webcam, that's the key word. And the question is, what do you need to do to prepare before you go on the webcam?
That's actually a very good question. See, a lot of people would think all you have to do is just turn on that iPad or iPhone or just a phone and point it to yourself. It's actually a lot more than that. But I'll kind
Do
of
the hair and
well, not too, but I guess do your mic check, do your your audio check, make sure it's good, your Wi-Fi, your lighting, because what we think is normal here may not be normal to the
Right,
camera.
right.
And like before we began, like the angle of your face, like are
Right,
you
right,
making
right.
yourself look awkward? Because those
Hey,
few
so I have
inches.
like a really like real life question here, like in terms of like, when you mentioned the angle, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are using like their laptop when you're doing like your Zoom calls, right? And the laptop opens this way, and then there's always going to be like this open angle to it.
Right.
And so you're always kind of looking at like, the bottom of your face.
Correct.
What do you do to?
Everything, eye level. It should be at eye level, one way or another.
Really? So you prop it up.
Yeah, it looks really weird in normal life because you don't need your laptop that high,
Right.
but you need
And then
your
is it like a
camera.
90-degree angle, or do you want to like overcompensate so you're looking like down at me?
No, I usually have it at straight up at eye level. Okay. Yeah, because and it's just nicer to edit too.
Right,
yeah,
right,
if you
right,
want
right.
something that's like
That's a
straight
good
up.
point, that's a good point.
And also do test runs. I will say that over and over again. Do the rehearsals with yourself because sometimes you just don't know unless you watch a playback.
That makes sense.
For me personally, because of my industry, like I focus a lot on the audio because if you try to put it to test and you have a very good video like HD, full HD, but then there's a lot of noise and distraction, you can't actually sit through that video. But whereas if you have a so-so video, like maybe like, not exactly HD, but then you have really crystal clear sound. You can actually sit through that one.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Make sure you're not eating anything on that one.
that too. And make sure you're cleaning up the ambient noise.
Right.
And also for the script in the deck, a lot of people will tell me, I don't need a script because I know my stuff the best. But then that's actually not true because it's almost like you're recording a video. You might need, sometimes you need to have delay live or also it's pre-recorded.
Right.
So you do actually need a script of some sort just to keep yourself
Kind of
on
wish
track.
I had a script right now.
Yeah, okay, make him a script. But the thing is, even if you don't need it, it's just nice to have there just so that you're not missing anything and that you're actually on the right track, on the right rundown. Even if it's just a simple rundown, that actually goes a very long way. Another thing is set the scene because all people are seeing is right here. And unless you're really filling up that whole screen with, or is that close?
Right.
Or that, well, but then the stuff at the back actually matters because some people put a backdrop. Sometimes it's branding stuff. It's good advertisement too, right?
That's true.
Visually stimulating items. Sometimes it's the product itself, right? So whatever it is, make sure you have it in there.
Could you do that in a virtual background?
You can, but then, as I say, virtual backgrounds, sometimes they don't work out as nice. So, but that goes into the rehearsal. If it works, then yeah, you can. But make sure you do try that out and don't go for the stuff that's too distracting, because otherwise it just doesn't work. And last is the contingency plans. I know a lot of people don't really think about it. It's like, hey, what if there's dead air because of delays? What if there's tech issues? What if people aren't responding? What if your script is gone? Like, the screen goes blank and it's live. What if the video and the audio is bad? Like, do you actually have plans in case those things happen, right? So that's something that we have to bear in mind just to keep the answer short.
I feel like a lot of that comes with just practice too, right? So like, like if you're pitching like an important investor and you feel like this guy is, potentially be like one of your lead investors, make sure you have a series of pitches leading up to that, right?
Exactly.
You don't want your first pitch to be practiced on that guy. Right?
Exactly. When they say like, when you fail, don't fail in public or don't fail on a large scale. So that's exactly what it is. Why is a one-line description that important in a pitch? Is it because you guys have short attention spans?
I think, I think maybe it is.
Is it?
But, I think it's also that, like, we like our entrepreneurs to be able to, crystallize what they're doing and, just be able to extract, like, the key element of, what they want to do, right? Because a lot of people, when they try to add too much like like words or too much like themes or like buzzwords again, right? I mean, they lose sight of what problem they're really trying to solve, right? And then if you lose sight of that, then that actually leads on to you don't know how to make your strategy. You don't know how to implement that strategy. You don't know what's important, right? Like I was talking to like founders today, and it was just like, okay, well, if revenue driving businesses or revenue driving parts of your team are going to be like the most critical for the survival of your company in the next 6 to 12 months, then everything non-revenue generating becomes second priority, right? And so like that actually impacts how you think about resource allocation. And so like if you're not able to crystallize exactly what you are trying to do in like one succinct sentence or like one succinct, it doesn't have to be like that just being like, you know, nitpicky, but it's just like one succinct idea, then, you know, it's very easy to go off the rails and, you know, just like start investing in like different things that are not, you know, important to your core.
Oh, so okay, so I get it. So it's not just the attention span, because I mean that's probably part of it, because you guys see so many of them, like you know, in a short period of time. But if they can't condense it, it actually it means there's other problems too.
No, it's a true indicator of like how they view their own business, right? So it's like, I don't know, like in like pitches and in the VC startup world, I mean, everyone tries, you know, gets caught up and like, you know, tries to stick to like, oh, one-line descriptions or 60-second elevator pitches, right? And that's become like a thing. Like even like, you know, business plans or business competitions are formatted like that. But actually, I mean, there's no like hard and set rule, right? But people do that because they want to be able to see that this entrepreneur can really, you know, come down, like boil everything down to that one core thing that they're trying to do.
I like that. So everyone remember, that's actually a very good piece of advice. Let's see if
presentation skill.
Is that just the only word?
That's the only word.
Did you? Okay, present.
I'm good at reading, so okay, I need to extrapolate now. So what is presentation skills?
Okay.
So how do you pivot your presentation skills from, you know, offline now to online? What do you need to do? Actually,
that's a question that almost all of my students have asked me, like before they became my student, because with the COVID, it kind of made everything faster that we have to do this online thing. So there's a lot of people who are really seasoned speakers offline, but then when they do it online, it's almost like a new world to them. So there's a few things. I think if you don't remember anything else, these ones can actually make your videos almost like suddenly better. So have an anticipation for your audience needs. Actually, you need to have that kind of visualization, and that you need to kind of imagine. Like, you know how for a lot of, I'll give you an example. For the YouTube Live, you know how some girls, like when they're just like eating noodles and they're talking to their audiences.
I've heard of these, I haven't watched them.
It's the same concept. You need to have, you need to have an idea at least about who these people are, what are some things that they might be feeling, and what is it that they want. So you need to have that anticipation, and also present the questions and the scenarios to them before they even ask. The reason why is because first it generates some sort of activities in the chat, because people will resonate or not resonate, and or resonate, but it also shows that you're having a dialogue. That you're not just talking to yourself, right? It's not easy to be talking to yourself. And as I said before, spell it out even more. Things that you think, that you assume people will know, don't assume that they'll know. Just make it crystal clear. And also make sure that you can give them a chance to acknowledge that they heard you and that they understand you, which goes back to what Chibo was saying. Give that little bit of a pause, because it takes time for people to type on that dialogue box too. And also, the last one I think is quite important, is have a two-way communication, because as easy as it is for us to think that we're just broadcasting into a camera, what they give back to us is just as important, because this is not news. Because when you broadcast news, it doesn't really matter if they don't listen, because you've done your job. But then for here, if those people aren't talking back to you, you really haven't done your job, because like what you're saying, right? If they're dead silent, they're not that interesting. They're not that interested. So interaction, and also their attention span, don't forget about that. So make sure you attend to the attention span first, and then try to do something to get their interest, because you know they're here already. So.
I totally agree.
Yep. The last question is 1 minute, 3 minute, or 10 minutes. Okay, so when you pitch, well, not when you, but when you pitch an investor, how fast would you get to the point, ideally? So there's 1, 3, or 10.
When you get to the punchline of what you want to do, I mean, definitely within 3 minutes. I think, like, ideally, like, you want to throw the problem out there. And so, like, you know, the investor gets a sense of where we're going with this, right? Within like 30 seconds to like a minute, right? Like you really need to, because otherwise if you're throwing me like a lot of, you know, background information and just like overview stuff, but, you know, like, and talking about the competitive landscape, but I still don't know what you guys do. I mean, like for the first that whole part of that presentation, I'm very confused. Like, I'm just like waiting for, okay, well, I need a context. This is like a context, but I need like what you're trying to do to fit in this context,
Right.
so that I can, visualize and see how you fit within that, within all of that you're presenting to me, right? Like if you give me like everything but, then
everything but.
like, yeah, everything but like the key point or like the key thing that you're doing.
And it will just leave you hanging.
Then I'm just like, oh my gosh, please tell me what you're doing, right?
Do you think the reverse would work for you? So if they start with the reason why you should listen and then go
so
into
I found
everything
like
else.
the best pitches I've sat in on are the entrepreneurs who come in and they tell me, look, this is a problem. This is like a big problem in the world right now. This is, how many people are facing this problem, and this is what we're doing to address that problem. Like, if that is like your first 3 to 5 slides, 3 to 4 slides even, 2 to 3 slides, whatever it is, I mean, that's amazing. Right?
Wow.
Because like for the whole rest of that presentation, whether that's 30 minutes or 60 minutes, and when you're sitting in that meeting with the VC, you can then, bring out all the other stuff to make your case. But yeah, no, definitely get to the point, like way early on.
3 minutes.
You need to leave some time for the entrepreneur to like tell their story and just like set the table.
They could do it in 30 seconds, like the one
That'd
that
be
you
even
said you were
better.
very impressed with. Hey, it's
Yeah,
doable
exactly.
too. So it looks like that's it. Well, we're
Perfect.
good. I know.
High five.
All right. No.
Okay.
I'll do-
High elbow.
would you- high elbow. All
right.
right. So everyone, stay tuned because coming up, we for the next session that's coming up, we have sportsmanship and entrepreneurship, just as interesting. So everyone, stay
Super
tuned.
exciting.
See you around.
Bye.